Hi folks, you're with Tassus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about women who are very well-to-do, who simultaneously claim to be oppressed, and that they are fighting against oppression, and they are representing the huddled, oppressed masses, as quite apart from their own terrible oppression, to bring social justice to the world. Now, I'm going to go through a few examples here, and you'll probably be a little surprised. Now, here's a lady who worked for, maybe a year and a half as a trainee kindergarten teacher. So imagine, very, very low income. But she was smart enough to realise that if you want to go places, you either have to work hard and do things, or you have to find rich men and marry them, and then to spend a few years in a relationship, then divorce them and get a free house and whatever else in the process. Here's this woman. She's in her 40s and she's got 4 properties, and we're talking prime properties here. We're not talking shit boxes out in the middle of nowhere, and has a very substantial share portfolio, and has worked for and earned absolutely none of it. And now has been married multiple times, got multiple free houses and so on. So now she's focused on, with one exception, she's focused on targeting rich men and ingratiating herself with them, getting married, or at least having a relationship, and then, as I say, getting a free house and getting share portfolios and so on. So now in her 40s, she doesn't have to work, lives a very nice life, thank you, has a very nice inner city house, shacked up with another guy who renovated it for her, and so has, you'd say, quite a luxurious lifestyle. Lots of traveling and lots of endless leisure time, and is never going to have to worry about money again. And again, hasn't even worked for 2 years in her entire life. Now, in any other situation, the law would say, hey, you've deliberately set out to defraud people of their money, and therefore you're going to go to prison, or you've got to pay it back or something. But of course, this is not the case here. Not only has she got rich through the relationships, but effectively the government and the social justice warriors are cheering her on. She's given those straight white Nazi men a good scene too, and well done. She's a moral and just person. So that's her. But you talk to, she is convinced she's oppressed, and will even cry on demand and whimper and things like that when she's a very well-to-do and hasn't had to lift a finger to make it. So now, to try and explain to, well, you're not oppressed. You're a multi sort of gazillionaire or multi-millionaire. I don't know, the property's probably worth 10 to 12 million, say, in total, plus the shares. So she's probably worth 15 million. So, you hardly rate that as mega rich, but doing very nicely, thank you. And again, doesn't have to work, doesn't worry about money. Just the dividends from the share portfolio alone is really enough for her to do very nicely, thank you. She's rented the other property she stole from these men out. So she's, with the rental income and the property portfolio income, she's doing very nicely, thank you. But again, to explain to her, how can you possibly say you're oppressed? And she has, those men were terrible to her, and so on and so forth. All men are evil, and so no, you can't talk her out of it. She is oppressed, and she is hard done by, and so that's her take on things. She's definitely oppressed, and that's it. And she refuses to have a. If you attempt to sort of to change your mind, to look, you can't be oppressed. Look at the, look how much money you've got. Look how much you're worth. Then she becomes all strange and begins to hyperventilate and pretend she's about to cry and all this sort of thing. So anyway, that's another. Now here's another one. She's somebody who was going though. I suppose she's not bad looking. Average in my view, but she managed to shack up with a guy just on a casual sex basis, but she stayed doing sexual favors for him, and in return he effectively gave her an apartment in one of the nicest areas of Australia, and got her very well-paying jobs, and made sure that she was looked after. And without him, she'd have been working on the refund counter at Walmart or something. But because of providing sexual favors over quite a period of time, like 10 years or so, she ended up sort of getting quite a lot of money, so she could just gallivant around the world, indulging her oppression to the nth degree, and still have plenty of money left to buy a nice house and buy a nice car, and still go on vacations and that sort of thing. And again, this is for someone who really hasn't worked that much and has just been gifted jobs that now she fancies herself as being some high-powered genius, but she's not. She's probably not a moron, but not much better. But she is convinced that she is oppressed. She is hard done by. She's victimized because her parents apparently came from another country. So that's it. She suffered racism because of it. I mean, what racism? You had a straight white guy who was throwing all these favors and gifts at you, $1 million property given to you as a gift. I mean, it's hardly hard done by. But she believes that some of the sexual acts that she got up to keep him on side were things that she later regretted. And so she's now trying to argue that she'd have been much happier if she had none of those things but had kept her self-respect, for example. But when she's invited to give the property and all the money away that she's got, no, I'm keeping that if you don't mind. But she's convinced she's oppressed, and again, will refuse to accept anything other than the fact that she is an oppressed victim, is hard done by, is put upon, and so on. So the fact that she's better off than 99, or well, maybe not that many, but say a good 90, better off than 95% of the population. No, she's oppressed. That's it, and won't accept anything else, and will regale you with stories of oppression. She also harbors. Anything that's said to her, she perceives somehow as a slight or a put down, and she'll sweat on it for months, if not years, and waiting for the opportunity to get back because she's such an oppressed victim, and so on. So that's another one. And then going to another person here. Now she's never really worked. I think she worked for maybe 6 months after she finished college. She got some affirmative action degree, and then married a well-to-do guy who's got ahead since. He's on a very substantial income and benefits now, a very prestigious role. But she's convinced that she's amongst the ranks of the most oppressed in the country, if not the world, and has this sort of simpering way of talking and so on, and pointing out all these injustices. If there's any book that comes out about oppression or anything like that, she's the first one at the shop to buy it, and so on, and revels in this oppression. And yet she lives in some of the most expensive real estate in Sydney. Drives $100,000 plus motor cars. Can indulge all her hobbies and the yoga and the whole thing, and doesn't have to worry about money. Has exotic international vacations, and lives a life of day-to-day luxury. Swimming pool overlooking the ocean, and the whole thing. You couldn't get somebody more pampered and living in much more luxury than that. And the next stage of luxury outside of that is sort of people like Bill Gates or something. So that's how well off this woman is. But she insists that she's oppressed and put upon, and that she's struggling for recognition, all this sort of thing. I mean, you go, give me a break. It's hard. But she won't have it, and again indulges in this fantasy that she's oppressed and is somehow fighting back against the patriarchy and white supremacy, and she's white, incidentally. So Donald Trump is the most the manifestation of evil, and whatever needed to be done to get him out of the White House is quite acceptable. Any law can be broken. Any political lie told. Anything is acceptable in getting him out of there because he's oppressing all the. Do you know he puts babies in cages? Intake of breath. I mean, it's almost impossible to talk to people like this. It's so fucking stupid. Now, there's other similar examples of rich people like that. Who again, play the oppression thing, getting together in their yoga classes and boohooing about how evil and wicked and oppressive the world is, even though they don't have to work and they live in luxury, water views, yachts, and fancy cars and so on, and they can decide to buy that they're buying organic this and so on, so that, so they can go into shop and pay $50 for a jar of honey because it's the latest in organic something or other. Now, the average person can't do that, but they don't see that they're living a life of huge privilege, and that they're not oppressed, not in the slightest, and nor have they been. Now, these people have married into money, and they wouldn't be that well off without it or anywhere near it if they had to make the money themselves. But they. They nonetheless claim to be oppressed, even in the midst of all those riches and all that luxury. So I'll mention one other one here. This is a girl who was in one of my classes actually at high school, and I didn't know, I quite liked her. We got on all right, but I didn't think she looked that good. But I noticed when the male teachers were around, they seemed to sort of go a little bit weak at the knees. So she obviously had something there that men responded to. I don't think she quite realised it when she was, or quite sussed it when she was at school. But a few years later, I sort of. Probably, I don't know how many it would be. Probably more than 10 years later, I bumped into her, and she decided to become a professional mistress to rich men. So she realised that not long after leaving high school, I guess, that she had something that men wanted. I still couldn't work out what it was, because she didn't look that good. It's not like she was. Had a great body. I mean, her legs weren't that good, or there wasn't anything there that I could see. But hey, that's just me. So she ends up being realizing that that rich men, and what's the point of doing this sort of thing if you can't get rich men? So she targeted rich men and ended up having relationships with them and making sure that she got. Now I'd done quite well. I was like a VP at the time, and I was doing all right. But she was worth 3 times, 4 times what I was worth, even though she hadn't done a day of work in her life. She targeted rich men and became their mistress, and they. And I'm talking rich, rich where they can hand off $1 million without a blush. So they were giving her, property and jewelry and share portfolios. So she was telling me about this, and I bumped into her and we went and had a coffee, and she was saying, "Hey, I woke up one day. I didn't want to be a receptionist on shit money, treated like shit. I wanted to have all the good things in life, and this was the way to get it." And she said, "I don't make them give it to me; they want to, and I give them what they want. They give me what I want. It's a happy arrangement." And I look, all power to well done. I'm not sure it's a career choice they should be talking about in the the high school careers counselling department. But anyway, she was when I was worth for example, $100, she was worth $450 type thing. That was how well ahead of me, and she was actually shacked up in one of Sydney's the penthouse apartment in one of Sydney's premier hotels on the harbour front in down there in Sydney Harbour, and was driving a top of the range Porsche and. And so all paid for by the boy. It seemed that the boyfriend was actually using the company money to do it, as far as I could tell. Like the penthouse was rented permanently by this big firm, to ostensibly to put up visiting executives and so on, and maybe she had to vacate it from time to time, but otherwise was there full time, living in absolute luxury, and so that was her. The interesting thing about this, I know there's another sort of sidebar story there. She so happened she was the mistress to the CEO of a company that was trying to headhunt me. They tapped me on the shoulder, and I'd had a meeting with the guy, the CEO, and the money they were putting on the table was all right, but it wasn't really much better than I was getting. So I didn't see why I should really get excited about it. And so he told me, "Oh, look, the cupboard's bare. I've got no more to give you. I've done the best I can." He's giving me, which I knew was bullshit, by the way. But he's just one of those slippery dudes. But I'm coming down the steps out of the building that the office is in, and she's walking up the steps. She's his mistress. So she tells me all the goodies that he's paying her, and all the benefits she gets, and it's more than double what he was offering to pay me. so I thought, no, screw you, Jack. But that was, but she again believes that she's oppressed. So in spite of having all this property and doing all, she believes she's put upon, oppressed, hard done by, and when again she's living this life of luxury that people would kill for. And I know everyone's prepared to do those sorts of things to get that sort of luxury, but there are people out there who are more than happy to do it. So I'll just go one more similar sort of thing. I met this company that we were doing business with. I met they'd hired a young sort of girly in marketing, and she fancied herself as hot. She wasn't much to look at, I didn't think. She thought she was, but I didn't think much. But I thought she was like really scrawny and had a bad attitude and that sort of thing. But anyway, I was looking at the paper sort of a couple of years after having met her, and she's on the front page. She's had a relationship with one of the nation's richest men, and managed to score something like $30 million out of it in some sort of settlement. And she'd been she'd been this really high class call girl, and had been like his permanent mistress really for some years, and so it made but her, she again believes that she's hard done by and put upon, and the $30 million, who cares? And so she's frequently getting into, to all sorts of trouble, and it's again in the media. She's become a bit of a socialite there, but she also believes she's a victim and is oppressed. So anyway, that's my take on that one. Look forward to seeing your comments below. You've been fantastic today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.